Hey everybody, it's Hawk here, and we are going to talk about on day 7 insects. Now, mosquitoes and horseflies and everything else is bad enough when you're being an adventurer wandering around, but, well, it's when they start getting in real big groups. Giant swarms that are going to eat you, or they're just really big and nasty and horrible. I mean, for example, there's always the mummy. Then there's Indiana Jones, the Crystal Skull. And then finally, you have Damnation Alley. Now, you think that's bad enough, and you're credit your flamethrower, well, you just gotta remember there's all the giant suckers. Example of those, you have them. King Kong as an example of how horrifying that can get and how quick that can go bad. And then Nausicaa and the Valley of the Winds for when they're all kaiju-sized, and you're not, and don't have a Godzilla handy. Now, I guess the upside to this is they're all just bugs. And apparently making bugs really, really big doesn't make them any smarter than they are when they're small. So they're all entirely instinct-driven and just have really big freaking ganglia, which just drives them to do basic pre-programmed tasks. Now, that doesn't stop them from being horrifying, because now you're dealing with a 4-foot-long wasp, and you're trying to figure out how physics allows that thing to fly. Don't bother asking, you don't want to know. And there's this, I'd like to point out how horrifying the insect kingdom is to some of us. I can't remember the particular name of the wasp, but there is a wasp that injects its young into other insects, which then rip out of it freaking xenomorph style. Now let's make the wasp that big, and it could very well be doing it to you. It's not pleasant to even think about, honestly, let alone be facing it. I mean, we all hate wasps as is. And that's just wasps. Now, if you played Fallout New Vegas, you know about cazadors, the giant Satan wasps of the wastes. Well, it's fairly accurate when you get something that big. It shouldn't have venom that potent, but screw it, it's a bad scientist's dreamland. Yeah, they're made by some jerk. So, you get them, then you get giant spiders. I know, spiders are insects. It's a giant arthropod. It's an arachnid, I know. So you get them, you get giant scorpions. Again, Fallout will point out to this one. The giant spiders, you can go to Skyrim. They're all over the place. Because they're simple. They're real simple for people to put in games and things. Because bugs creep us out. On an instinctual level, we are creeped out by insects. I don't know if it's our old lizard brain, or just the fact that they look really alien that just weirds us all out, but there they are. Now, if you think the giant ones are bad enough, as I alluded to initially, swarms. Swarms of them are terrible. And they're terrible for their own reason. Now, accuracy of those particular scenes from the movies aside, swarms of insects can be absolutely devastating. Locusts, of course, will eat crops and usually not people, but there's plenty of horror films that involve swarms of bugs eating people. So the Mummy, of course, has the scarabs that'll go and nom on you, and accuracy, again, aside. In a fantasy universe, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a bunch of flesh-eating roaches, similar to Damnation Alley, or a bunch of scarabs. Now, scarabs, of course, will fly, which makes that all worse, so now there's a flying death cloud coming after you. Of course, there could be locusts that could be whipped into a tizzy by a druid, or just perhaps they're starving, and so now they'll just eat you because they're desperate. Of course, there are swarms of ants, because that's actually a thing. Army ants. What? No. Just never, okay? They'll just crawl right up you, and they'll just start biting into you, and if enough of them get up there, they can kill you. Okay? Bullet ants. Same trick. I don't think they gather in swarms that big, but in a fantasy world, again, I wouldn't want to take that risk. And the main issue with swarms is that, well, it does nothing. As it does this. I mean, other than me literally taking this and then just smacking it on the flat and smashing as many as possible. Except that if it's a swarm, there's literally hundreds, if not thousands of them pouring over you. This is where the mage getting their living flamethrower on would be immensely helpful. And this is kind of why I want all mages in my party to have an AoE of some kind, because I have no way of dealing with these things. Or carry Molotovs with you. Even if you're in a fantasy world, you can carry a Molotov. It's just somehow, it's a nice propellant, and a wick, and a nice breakable container. It can save your life. So, why would a swarm do this? I mean, D&D has them, but why would things swarm? Like a spider swarm makes really no sense to me, unless it's a particular breed of spider that actually hunts. But why would they form a swarm? Honestly, it could be some sort of evolutionary pressure, where it's just better for them to do this, because then they can go and attack larger objects. They could always be forced out. Rats do this. I mean, rats aren't insects, but in a swarm sense, I mean, use them as an example, because they're just terrified and they will go over absolutely anything to get the hell out. And if it involves having to bite their way through something, they will. I can assume insects would do something similar. If their flight response is triggered, literally in this case, because they're basically a program, they will run away from you, or whatever it is, and if it means going over you, they will go over you. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to bite you, but it's not something I would like to deal with. Then there's the ones that will swarm together for predation purposes. I could actually see locusts sort of getting this as a starvation protocol. If they were to go into starvation mode, they will band together in a massive swarm and then just strip the flesh off of anything in their way to get sustenance, while they're stripping plants and everything else in the way. Now, giant insects are actually something that happened on Earth. You go way back, and I'm not going to try to name the era because I can't remember the proper era, but you had dragonflies the size of an eagle. That is serious. Now, would they go after something our size? Probably not. We're not really worth the effort. But they had, arachnids about that wide, about that long. Yeah, about that long. The legs would go out to about there. They're pretty big, and they were hunter spiders. Meaning they probably existed in a hole, and then they would have webs outside, which would kind of give them a little sensory, actually a sensory apparatus, where they would then climb out of the hole and then eat stuff. There's also the Arthroplura. For those of you that have played Ark, you probably know it. It's a giant millipede. Upside is, it was a vegetarian. It didn't eat things. Giant centipedes, however, will totally try to eat you, because they are predatory. And seriously, if you were to get a centipede the size of the Arthroplura, I don't want to deal with that. Its pincers would be like one pincer would be like that long. Nice big curve here. You get two of them. That could possibly, literally split me in half. Just pinch. Just like a pair of scissors. It'd be horrifying. If you get, if millipedes or something become predatory, it'd be very difficult to deal with them, because something that big would have a very tough chitinous hide. It wouldn't technically be a hide, it'd be shut, but whatever. It'd be very difficult to puncture. And on top of this, let's say you were to get let's go back to the centipedes again. I wouldn't be entirely surprised if they started sort of acting in a nest sort of manner, where there's several of them hanging out together, because it just increases their odds. Now, I wouldn't expect them to do anything particularly fancy, sort of like wolves in a sort of circling capacity, but they'd probably just attack the same targets, and they may or may not still have a poison. This, of course, would be very bad for you, because not only if they don't kill you, they could just pinch you and then hold on to you, and now you've got this giant multi-legged monstrosity, which is gotta be creepy as hell. Think about that. Run into an 8-foot-long centipede in the dark that might rear up to be at eye level with you, and now you have to fight that. This is when you just quietly get the spear and make it go away. Spears are your friend. You want to keep those around. Keep the nasty things away from you, and everything is infinitely better. But yeah, that's centipedes, and the problem with centipedes is they'll have the walls on top of that, so you gotta watch out above your freaking heads. They'll come crawling out of every kind of creepy crawly. Now, that's just centipedes. Okay? Ants are their own issue, because generally, if you run into one giant ant, you're going to run into the other giant ant's buddies, and then you just have ant problems. It's literally normal ant problems. You know, anytime you get a normal amount of ants, you know, the normal size ones, there's always just tons of them. Well, it's the same problem shows up when they're big ants, okay? And they don't even have to be like the ones from them, okay? We're not talking car-sized ants. We're talking, you know, a dog-sized ant, like the ones from Fallout. It's bigger than a dog, I guess. But, bigger, you know, that's not massive, just, you know, that big will be enough. It'll have 4 or 5 buddies, and they will kind of work together to beat the living crap out of you, and probably just snip your legs off and cart you off down the hole into horrible murderness. It's a horrible way to die. That's just them, okay? Now, spiders. Again, I know, it's not an insect, it's an arachnid. Stick with me here. Creepy crawly stuff that shouldn't be this big. Spiders suck. They suck so bad. Okay, frostbite spiders in Skyrim. Everybody knows about them. They're annoying. They're not a huge deal. You get the really big ones, and they suck at low levels because they're ginormous. I'm not terribly concerned about those because something that big would have to have really, really thick legs. It's a danger, don't get me wrong, but it can't really be sneaky unless you're in a cave, and frankly, you should be able to see it. It's, again, they're fairly large. It shouldn't be too bad. Unless you're in Deadlands, folks, because Deadlands makes everything better. I say with utter and complete seriousness. There it is called the Tarantula. As in terror. Yeah, Tarantula. Because it's a giant trapdoor spider. This obnoxiously massive trapdoor spider, about the size of a wagon. They can be smaller, but about the size of a wagon. Sits in a trapdoor and is basically undetectable. Until it pops open the door, dives out, eats you and the horse, and drags you back in and injects you with all sorts of horribleness. The Reckoners are jerks. So you get to that, and there's no something saying D&D or any of the fantasy world wouldn't have something like that. If we're going to have other giant spiders, even the ones that are just the size of large dogs, there's nothing saying you're not going to have a trapdoor spider that's the same size, and a trapdoor spider that's big is going to be sneaky. Have you seen their normal holes? Pretty easy to disguise that, especially because they can have, like, if they get that big, they can literally have bushes growing in it. They can just make a bush covering, and then they'll pop that sucker open, and the bushes can stay right on it because there's enough dirt under there, because it's big enough to push it off. It actually makes it worse. It's harder to find them that way. And they can eat you. And then there's giant wasps, and I already mentioned cazadors, so I don't need to say anything more about that, because it's literally just wasps, which already suck and are full of hate. And now you've made them bigger, so they have more hate in them. Ugh. Imagining them biting you, and it's just horrible. And then swarms. Like I said, swarms, you need to smack them with blunt things or burn them. It's just a terrible way to die. Now, how do you deal with giant bugs? Upside, you deal with giant bugs the same way you deal with everything else. Giving them the business end of this. Or, if they're the big ones anyway, you just jam them. Jab them with the spear, stab them with the sword, pull out your gun, fill them full of holes. Personal preference. Swarms? I already mentioned Molotovs. Molotovs are your very, very good friend. Flamethrowers are your good friend. Do you not have Molotovs or flamethrowers? Well, it sucks to be you. Point the mage at them. If this requires you to pick up the mage, point them at them like a flamethrower, and yell, burn, do it. Do whatever you have to do to make them go away. Because swarms suck. Giant insects are actually easier to deal with, ironically, than the swarms from smaller insects. You would think it wouldn't be that bad to deal with swarms of insects. Yeah, there's literally hundreds of them, like we're talking the mummy. No. Flamethrower. You want the flamethrower. Also, torches can help you, because you can just swing the fire through them, and then their natural flight response should kick in, and they'll bugger off. At that point, you could throw oil down, like if you have a lantern, which you should have a lantern. Get that. You can grab some oil, hurl that, smash that, and get some oil going, and then light it. How you light that is entirely up to you, but that's a way to deal with them. It's not a great way to deal with them, but it'll work. If you don't have any way to do area damage to a swarm, just run. Okay, there is no shame in saying I ran from a swarm of literally thousands of insects because they were trying to eat you. And honestly, the upside is you'll probably outrun them. You can probably outrun spiders. Mosquitoes at a dead run you'll outrun. Scarabs will outrun. You should outrun pretty much everything. Locusts are kind of quick, so that's a bad time, but you should be okay. The upside is that the larger the insects, so like locusts and stuff, they shouldn't, if you're wearing full plate, they shouldn't be able to get you if you're in a nice suited piece of full plate. Shouldn't. Okay, there's various magics that'll help you, I know, so you might want to put that on top just to be sure, but yeah. Full plate should generally protect you if it's late medieval, but if you're not playing in an era where that exists, your armor's not going to save you because they're just going to crawl under it and get into the tiny, tiny holes. It's very bad. Also, ant swarms will do that regardless, even if you're in full plate. They'll find the little holes. They'll crawl into your frickin' breather holes, okay? It's... no. Bad times. So get magic to keep them away. Honestly, if you can figure out how to use magical dice, honestly, I would get my spear enchanted, or any weapon actually enchanted, to, if you're in a fantasy world, just shoot out an AoE fire attack. Right? Even it's like, well, it's useless at high levels. Yeah, but you didn't pay all that much for it, did you? It's like a once per day burning hands. It's a swarm. Just burn everything in that general vicinity. It can save your life. Or just make sure the mage has it. Just make sure the mage has it. This is kind of their job. Or get an alchemist to the party and just burn everything with Molotovs. But now I'm repeating myself at this point. So, hope you enjoyed it. Remember to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, because YouTube's being kind of weird at the moment with the whole Google Plus thing, apparently, which is why you might not be getting it. So, if you haven't gotten any of my previous ones, that's probably what's going on, so go on back and check those out if you want. Peace out, everybody.